I was the disappointment, the starving artist, the one who wasted her degree to chase dreams instead of paychecks. What they didn't know was that the failure sitting quietly at the end of the table had just signed a 3-book deal worth $4.2 million and sold film rights to Netflix for a number that would make my sister's law firm salary look like pocket change. But tonight wasn't about me. It never was. I adjusted the simple black cardigan I'd thrown over my thrift store dress and watched my mother beam at my sister Jennifer across the table at Giovanni's, the upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Portland that Mom had been talking about for weeks. This wasn't just dinner. This was a celebration. Jennifer had made partner at Morrison & Klein, one of the most prestigious law firms in the Pacific Northwest. At 32, she was the youngest female partner in the firm's history. "I'm just so proud," Mom said for the 15th time, dabbing at her eyes with her cloth napkin. "Partner, at Morrison & Klein. Do you know how many people would kill for that?" Dad raised his wine glass. "To Jennifer, our brilliant daughter who actually made something of herself." The actually landed like a slap, but I was used to it by now. I lifted my water glass because heaven forbid I order the wine I could actually afford, and clinked it gently against the others. "Congrats, Jen," I said, and I meant it. My sister had worked hard. 80-hour weeks, sacrificed relationships, missed holidays. She'd earned this. Jennifer smiled at me, but there was something in her eyes. Not quite pity, not quite superiority. Somewhere in between. "Thanks, Sarah. How's the writing going?" The pause before writing was deliberate, like she was searching for a more generous word than hobby or pipe dream. "It's going well," I said simply. "Still working at that bookstore?" Dad asked, cutting into his osso buco. "Part-time, yes." At 29, Mom sighed, setting down her fork. "Sarah, honey, we've supported your creative phase, but don't you think it's time to consider something more stable? Jennifer could probably get you an interview at her firm. Administrative work, at least. Something with benefits. I appreciate that, but I'm happy with what I'm doing." "Happy doesn't pay the bills," Dad said. "Jennifer, remember when you wanted to join the Peace Corps after college? We told you to be realistic, and look at you now." Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, Sarah's situation is different." "Different how?" "She's throwing away her potential just like you almost did. But you listened to us. You were smart about it." I took a long sip of water. This was the dance we'd been doing for 7 years, ever since I'd graduated from UCLA with a degree in literature and told them I wanted to write novels instead of going to law school, like Jennifer, or business school like they'd hoped. "Maybe if you were more practical like your sister," Mom said, reaching across the table to squeeze Jennifer's hand, "you wouldn't be struggling so much. I worry about you, sweetheart. What happens when you can't make rent? When you're 40 and still living in that tiny studio apartment?" The tiny studio apartment in question was actually a beautiful 1-bedroom loft in the Pearl District that I'd bought outright 6 months ago. But they didn't need to know that. They'd only visited my old apartment once, 3 years ago, and seemed content to imagine I was still there, still struggling, still proving their point. "I'm managing fine, Mom." "Are you, though?" She exchanged a meaningful look with Dad. "Because last month when we asked if you wanted to join us at the Coast House, you said you couldn't afford the gas money." That had been a lie. I'd been on deadline for my 3rd book and didn't want to spend a weekend listening to extended family ask when I was going to get a real job. The gas money excuse had seemed kinder than the truth. "Speaking of money," Jennifer said, clearly trying to steer the conversation elsewhere, "with the partnership comes a significant raise. I'm thinking of finally buying that house in West Hills I've been looking at." Mom lit up. "Oh, the one with the view of Mount Hood?" "Jennifer, that would be perfect for you. It's $1.2 million, but with my new salary and the bonus structure." Jennifer pulled out her phone to show them photos. I watched my parents lean in, cooing over hardwood floors and the gourmet kitchen and the master suite. Their pride was palpable, filling the space around the table like expensive perfume. "This is what success looks like," Dad said, not looking at me but making sure I heard. "Planning for the future, building equity. Not throwing money away on rent while you wait for some magical publishing deal that's never going to happen." The magical publishing deal had already happened. 3 times. But I'd learned years ago that sharing my small victories, an agent signing me, a publisher's interest, a starred review in Kirkus only resulted in lectures about not getting my hopes up and having a backup plan. So I'd stopped sharing. I'd stopped trying to prove myself to them. I'd published my first book 4 years ago under the pen name Emma Sinclair, a psychological thriller that had done okay. Nothing spectacular, but it had earned out its modest advance. My second book had done better, much better. It had hit the New York Times bestseller list for 3 weeks and been optioned by a production company that never ended up making it. But my third book had changed everything. It had been on the Times list for 43 weeks. Foreign rights had sold in 32 countries. The audiobook, narrated by a famous actress, had won awards. And 6 months ago, Netflix had paid $3.7 million for the film rights, with me attached as an executive producer. The money was more than I'd ever imagined, more than I knew what to do with. I'd paid off my student loans, bought my apartment, set up retirement accounts, and still had more in the bank than both my parents combined had saved in their lifetimes. But I hadn't told them. At first, I'd wanted to wait for the right moment. Then the right moment never came. And eventually, I realized I didn't want to tell them. They didn't deserve to know. They'd had 7 years to believe in me, to ask questions, to show the slightest interest in my work beyond dismissing it as a phase. So I let them think I was failing. It was easier than watching them try to take credit for my success. "Sarah, you're being awfully quiet," Jennifer said, looking at me with genuine concern. "You okay?" "Just tired. I've been working a lot." "At the bookstore?" Mom asked. "Writing, actually. I'm on deadline." Dad snorted softly. "Deadline for what? A short story in some little magazine that pays $25? Something like that." The waiter appeared to clear our entrees and present dessert menus. As he approached our table, he paused, tilting his head as he looked at me. Then his eyes widened. "Oh my God," he said, his voice rising slightly. "You're Emma Sinclair." The table went silent. "I'm sorry," he continued, clutching the menus to his chest. "I don't usually do this, but I'm obsessed with your books. Obsessed. The Silent Shore changed my life. I've read it 4 times. I felt my cheeks flush. "Thank you. That's very kind. My book club is reading it next month, and we have like 40 members now because everyone wants to discuss it. And I heard, is it true Netflix is making it into a series? A film, actually. That's incredible." He was practically vibrating with excitement. Would you mind signing something? Anything? I have my copy in my car. I could run and get it." "Sure," I said softly. "That would be fine." He rushed off, leaving his menus on the table. My family stared at me. "What was that about?" Dad asked. "I write under a pen name," I said simply. "A pen name?" Mom frowned. "Why would you need a pen name? Lots of authors use them." "But why would someone want your autograph?" Jennifer asked, her lawyer brain already processing. "Sarah, what's going on?" Before I could answer, the restaurant's TV mounted in the corner above the bar switched from sports to the local evening news. And there, filling the screen, was my face. My real face. Next to the cover of The Silent Shore. "In entertainment news," the anchor said, her voice carrying across the now quiet restaurant, Portland native Emma Sinclair, whose real name is Sarah Chen, has just been announced as one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people of the year. The 39-year-old author's psychological thriller, The Silent Shore, has dominated bestseller lists worldwide, and the upcoming Netflix adaptation has already generated Oscar buzz. The anchor kept talking, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could hear was the ringing in my ears as I watched my parents' faces drain of color. The TV showed clips. Me at a book signing with lines around the block, me being interviewed on Good Morning America, me at the Netflix press conference, standing next to A-list actors who'd been cast in the film. The 3-book deal Sinclair signed last month is rumored to be worth over $4 million, the anchor continued, making her one of the highest-paid thriller writers in the industry. She'll be honored at Times Gala in New York next month alongside of... Mom grabbed the TV remote from a nearby table and fumbled to turn up the volume. But the segment had ended. Moving on to local weather. The waiter returned, breathless, clutching a worn paperback copy of my book. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to cause a scene. You're amazing." I signed his book with shaking hands. "Thank you for believing in stories. Emma, Sarah." He clutched it like treasure and backed away, still smiling. I looked at my family. Dad's mouth was opening and closing like a fish. Mom had gone completely pale. Jennifer was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. $4 million? Mom whispered. The 3-book deal, yes. The film rights were separate. And there's been another offer for the TV rights to my backlist, but my agent is still negotiating that. Your agent, Dad repeated slowly. You have an agent. I've had an agent for 5 years. 5 years. Mom's voice cracked. This whole time you've been successful? I offered. Yes. Why didn't you tell us? Jennifer asked, and to her credit, she sounded hurt rather than angry. Would you have believed me? I met their eyes. 3 years ago, when my first book came out, I tried to tell you. I brought a copy to Thanksgiving. Do you remember what Dad said? Dad looked down at his plate. He said, "That's nice, honey, but anyone can self-publish nowadays. Let us know when a real publisher wants it." It was a real publisher. It was Random House. Sarah, Mom started. And last Christmas, when I mentioned I'd hit the Times list, Mom, you said, "There are lots of lists, sweetie. Don't get ahead of yourself." I'd been on the list for 8 weeks at that point. In the top 3. The silence at the table was deafening. So I stopped trying, I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion rising in my chest. I stopped trying to get you to see me. To believe in me. I did it anyway. I succeeded anyway. And honestly, it felt better doing it without your validation than it ever felt trying to earn it. But we're your family, Mom said, tears now flowing freely. We should have known. We should have Sarah. Why didn't you try harder to tell us? Why didn't you try harder to ask? The question hung in the air. 7 years. 7 years I've been writing professionally. Not once did you ask to read my work. Not once did you ask the name of my publisher, or how sales were going, or what I was working on. You decided I was failing, and that was enough for you. That's not fair, Dad said, but his voice had no strength behind it. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone and opened my email, scrolling to the most recent message from my agent. This came in today. My publisher wants to extend my contract. 3 more books, $6 million total, plus film rights for any future adaptations. I showed them the screen. I was going to celebrate by myself tonight with takeout and a documentary, just like I celebrated my first book deal, and my second, and my third. Jennifer was crying now too. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. You were always kind, Jen. You never made fun of me like they did. But you also never defended me. You never asked to read my books. You never, my voice cracked. You never seemed to think I was worth taking seriously either. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered. From disappointment, from the reality of how hard publishing is. I thought, God, I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're a brilliant lawyer who works too hard for partners who will never appreciate you enough. I softened slightly. I do read the legal blogs, you know. I know what you've accomplished. I'm genuinely proud of you. We're proud of you, Mom said desperately, reaching for my hand. Sarah, we are. We're so proud. Now you are. Now that there's proof. Now that there's money and recognition and Time magazine. I pulled my hand back gently. But I needed you to be proud of me when I was waiting tables and writing until 3 a.m. I needed you to believe in me when I got my first rejection letter, and my 100th. I needed you 7 years ago. What can we do? Dad asked, and he sounded broken. Sarah, tell us what we can do. I thought about that. About what I wanted. About what I needed. Read my books, I said finally. All of them. Actually read them. And then, maybe, we can talk. I stood up, pulling cash from my wallet far more than my share of the meal and placing it on the table. Congratulations on the partnership, Jen. You earned it. I kissed the top of her head. Mom, Dad, I'll call you in a few weeks. I walked out of Giovanni's into the cool Portland evening. Behind me, I could hear Mom crying, Dad calling my name, but I kept walking. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. I'm reading them. All of them. Starting tonight. I love you. I'm sorry. I typed back. I love you too. Another text came through, this time from my agent. Time Gala update. They want you to bring family. Mom and Dad? Sister? Your call. I looked back at the restaurant, where through the window I could see my parents hunched over Jennifer's phone, presumably looking up Emma Sinclair, reading the reviews, watching the interviews, finally seeing what I'd built while they weren't paying attention. Maybe in a few weeks I'd answer that question. Maybe I'd invite them to New York. Let them see that world I'd created for myself. Maybe I'd introduce them to my agent, my editor, the producers who were bringing my words to life on screen. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe some things couldn't be fixed with apologies and belated pride. But tonight, I walked home to my beautiful apartment in the Pearl District, ordered Thai food from my favorite place, and opened my laptop to the manuscript that was due in 6 weeks. The words came easily, like they always did when I was honest about what I felt. I wrote about a daughter who became invisible to her family. I wrote about the quiet strength it took to believe in yourself when no one else did. I wrote about success that tasted sweeter because it was entirely your own. And somewhere around midnight, as Portland's rain started to fall against my windows, I got a notification on my phone. Jennifer had posted a photo on Instagram, all 3 of my books spread out on her bed, a glass of wine beside them, and a caption that read, "Just learned my little sister is Emma Sinclair. Starting book 1 of 3. Apparently I've been sleeping on a literary genius. Better late than never? Number proud sister. Number Emma Sinclair." The post had already gotten 200 likes. I smiled, closed my laptop, and went to bed. Tomorrow, I had 4,000 words to write, a podcast interview at noon, and a call with my film producer about casting choices. But tonight, I let myself feel it. All of it. The hurt of being unseen for so long. The satisfaction of proving them wrong. The strange emptiness of victory that came too late for celebration. And underneath it all, the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I hadn't needed their belief to succeed. I'd done it anyway. That was mine. That would always be mine. The failure they'd pitied at dinner was never failing at all. She was just succeeding in a language they'd never bothered to learn.